What you doing? I'm your Otakutainment, the AC Stories with this Otakutainment Reviews. I am talking about the original English light novel ContRact Volume 1 by Brandon Nowakowski. The cover art and design is by Jimmy O and Shiab Akram. It was published by Vic's Lab in 2023. Now I have plenty to say about this book before I get into the big breakdown, though. Here's some spoiler stuff just to give you a taste if you haven't read it yet. So, ContRact is quite an enjoyable read. It's pretty short, pretty straight to the point. The main cast is all college students, or the human ones at least, which is nice because usually when you get genre like this, they're usually high school. We see a whole lot of high school students, so them being in college is nice, but them being in college doesn't matter too much. Whole plot of this story for this first book is kind of set in motion by them doing a school project, but it could happen either way, so it's kind of just like, oh, here's the age kind of where the characters are at. Now the pacing is also really good for me. Not too much happens all at once. It's not trying to rush through anything until the very end. It kind of seemed like it got to the point where it's like, oh, well, this has to end because this has to be a book. But overall, the pacing was nice. I like stuff that takes its time to just kind of develop, and nothing has to like just be crammed in there. The whole first volume like is really self-contained. It really is just like there's this one story that happens in this book. The nicest part for me, though, is there's supernatural elements in it. You have, like, vampires, demon kind of things with these contracts that are hard to explain where they come from. But it's not overdone. Nothing gets too crazy. It's all really self-net. You could almost take these supernatural elements out and it would make sense, like, oh, these are kind of just people fighting too. And then the fighting system mainly revolving around chi, not overdone too. There is kind of like, was it worth putting it in there? Because like I said, it's not like anything is done a whole lot. It almost feels like it was added just to be like, oh, well, we have some kind of fighting element to this that is somewhat supernatural. Something maybe humans can play around with and mess with. Because you kind of see this and the chi of body and stuff. It's not a new concept. So it's something that can still be there, supernatural or not. So there's a lot of good things to say. I'll go through it as I break down. Before that, just little stuff I can nitpick because I paid attention to it. There's hardly anything described. It almost seemed to me like the characters were just coming on to a blank or very barely designed stage and just talking and fighting. Fighting, if anything, is described pretty well compared to everything else. I hardly have an idea what people look like. You get some description. I pretty much have no idea what any of the scenery or background looks like. And I also had no idea where this takes place, when this takes place. We eventually get a year of 1990. We get some kind of time elements, like, oh, they use payphones and stuff like that. A pager, but not too much besides that. Some just formatting stuff. There's no art aside the cover, which not a big deal. I just like art. It's a common thing in light novels, original English light novels, but it doesn't always have to be there. It's just something nice to have, especially when you don't have as much stuff being described. That would have helped a ton. There's other just little neat things. There's not art, but there's these weird little blood smears like at the start of each chapter, which is a nice touch. The ebook, I have both the print and the ebook version. The ebook one looks weird when it does. I didn't realize it was blood smear until I compared it to the print version. I don't know what that is about. Probably just formatting, because ebook stuff is weird either way. And then I never understood, I don't get yet if it matters, why the R is capitalized or bigger than the rest of it. Maybe it's a mystery for later. Don't really find out in this book, because none of the, except for one of the friends named Rao, none of them have an R in the name, so it can't be that. Maybe, unless that's a huge mystery for later. Another weird thing for me is this was originally published as a Kindle novella title, and because of that, it's written originally to be these shorter episodes that kind of get combined into this actual book. And although I think the book is great, especially a physical copy, it has a good length to it. Just the way chapters are The number of pages in each chapter is very intentional. None of them, I think, even got over 20. So it breaks up the flow a little bit. You can have longer chapters, especially these fight scenes. I don't need 3 chapters for one fight. You can have one big one. So the flow is kind of broken up when you have so many little chapters. I think a lot of people like that. It's not a thing for me because I'm going to read the whole book. It's not a long book. It's quick to read. Having a bunch of little chapters just distracts from like the things actually happening in the story. And then as the story went on, there was more and more typos. I don't know if it was just I started noticing them more as I got used to the writing style and stuff would stick out. Also, the print version had these weird, any word that has a diacritic, any kind of accent or umlaut, stuff like that, got changed to what I think is a Russian letter. Different Russian letters depending on the different letter. But in the ebook, they're fixed. So I don't know how that happens in the print version. Unless it's intentional too. It's some kind of code I don't know about. But in the ebook, which came out first, I don't know what happened with that. But yeah, a lot of this is just me little nitpicking things, especially describing stuff. I think that's a me thing. You see more and more indie or newer writers, they don't describe stuff as much. And for me, I'm like, well, I'll read a book. I want to really dive into a world. And this is really like, well, here's what happens. That's it. So everything else, it's just me nitpicking. The only reason I nitpick is because I enjoyed it and I actually took the time to like pay that much attention to this stuff. Cool, so that is the spoiler-free part of this. Spoiler-free rambling, if you want to call it. Now I really want to start digging a little bit more into kind of going chapter by chapter, bit by bit of how stuff happens and why I like it. What I could have thought could have happened better. I don't know. Chapter 1, of course, we meet everyone. Issa, I don't know, 20 years old, with friends are Rao, who a year younger, and Elsie the same year. And just college students, you kind of see them in class, but the class really doesn't matter. I don't even know what the class is. It's some kind of university, I guess. Who knows? But they're adults, and at least that's something. Eventually, Issa finds a scroll-like contract in a backpack while in class with Rao and Elsie, and they see what do you desire, the terms, the payment. Super simple. I like it. It's just straight to the point. Can be a lot of interpretation to it, which we find out, yeah, this whole thing, why everything happens, a lot of interpretation to it. But yeah, so while the friends, Rao and Elsie, are on a date, they get attacked. Issa happens to stumble upon them while they're in an alley. It goes bad. Issa seems like pretty much is killed, but the blood from getting attacked gets onto the contract, activates it, and kind of understands Issa's answers. But we don't really see what those are yet, though, and that's where the interpretation comes. I will say, though, while the attack is happening, we do see Issa kind of hoping, wishing that Rao and Issa are able to get away safely and they can be safe. And it really seemed like that was the desire. And that does happen, so it is granted. But later we really see that, oh, no, the payment is the blood, which is how we get a vampire out of it. But the desire in terms, the desire was to protect, if anything. I feel like that one was pretty obvious, unless that's not it, and it's an oversight. The terms is what's really decided. And even now, I can't think of what would accurately be the terms besides the payment. Protect, because there's not that much protecting. There's the contractor, which Issa wakes up to, Zure, like a vampire. I don't know if it's a straight up vampire or it's more like a demon that is vampire-like. That goes with all the contractors we meet. I don't know if they're like more demons, more like some kind of other entity. I don't know too much about them yet, and we never really learned too much about them. And that's fine for now, because that's kind of the mystery of it, especially when we get to end. But yeah, when Issa wakes up, Rao and Elsie are gone. There's bodies just splattered. And Zuri used those bodies to help bring Issa back. And then they go home. They go over the contract a bit. And that's where I said earlier. And then we learned that Rao and Elsie's memories were altered as to not remember Issa being at Alley 2, not remember Zuri. Just a little like mind manipulation going on there. Then we get to the third chapter where we get a peek at another contractor talking to someone, and it took me until after I actually finished the story and started going with these notes, I realized this contractor, Masya, is Vimris Masya, who is the contractor to the signer, Rao, the friend. And the way they talk and interact with each other, there's no clues. Their personalities are completely different, and I never understood it because throughout the rest of it, it's just referred to Vimris instead of Masya. So I didn't put two together until it's too late. But it's just a weird thing because they talk completely differently, but they're also alone. It's the only time we really see them alone, I think. And I think it has something to do with Rao's contract, which we never actually see any other details of, aside from like Vimris is taking care of Rao, something related to the contract. Now we see more into Zuri's and Issa's living situation and their terms, more like it if anything, but Zuri will help Issa get into better health in order to get better blood. And then Issa has Zuri and Elsie meet each other, but the whole part of them actually meeting, the initial meeting, which I feel like would be the most intensity of like nervousness of how's this gonna happen when they actually meet and this goes on, that whole part is skipped. I don't know why, because it just goes right to the end and we learn that Zuri was using suggestion the whole time. I don't know, I feel like the initial meeting shouldn't have been skipped. It makes no sense to me why it was, especially if the whole meeting itself was short. You could have had the whole meeting in there. I don't know, it was weird. But then we continue on. After this, Elsie getting home. Feels like shit, has some weird eye stuff going on. And pretty much piece together enough stuff to figure out Zuri without really figuring out Zuri. Just know something is up. Then we continue on to Rao's house, where we do finally meet Vimris. Rao, coming from a rich family, has own house kind of. And Vimris is supposed to be like a tutor, which I don't understand either. Except for me just now realizing Vimris also like refers to like being there and helping as Rao's tutor even when alone and thinking to himself. So maybe the contract comes more from Rao's family than directly with Rao himself. I just realized that. There's a lot of stuff that can be left, and this is me trying to piece it together and figure it out now in case this is plot points for the second book, which I hope it is. I'm looking forward to the second book. They get together because they're going to start working on a school project. Pretty much the last time school really comes into play, except for it being an excuse. And they're going to start researching some kind of serial killer. It's as simple as that. They're just going to go out, look for clues about the serial killer, not try and play hero, not completely sure what the fascination is, except for maybe it also has something to do with Rao's contract. This whole thing almost shifts to it being more about Rao and Vimris than Issa and Zuri, but hey, the plot is either way. We don't have to have a main character being the only one in the spotlight. I kind of like that too. It's kind of a different route to go with it. So this is where we learn more of Rao's tutor, Vimris, also being a contractor. But we don't know what the reason Rao signed for it, except for maybe it's a family, which isn't said, but it's what I'm thinking of now. But they continue working on the project. Not much is going on yet, but then eventually Vimris figures out Zuri is a contractor. Zuri kept having you suggestion 2 on Vimris, constantly reapplying, but it gets pretty obvious. But Rao for some reason wants to deny, even though the clues are pretty obvious. Issa had the contract, showed it to both Rao and Elsie, so I don't know why so much reluctance to deny it or to accept it, whichever. I don't know, maybe there's more to this that Rao's afraid of. We don't know how long Rao's also been a signer, so it's hard to tell. But if we go back to earlier in the book, it seems like there's more stuff going on that we never really learn about further yet. But now their search for a serial killer has started. Issa and Zuri get some info while Rao and Elsie actually do track down the killer. And this is mainly where I complained about stuff. It takes too many chapters when this all could have just been one bigger chapter. It wouldn't even been that long of a chapter. Some of these could have been combined too. And even within the chapters themselves, they're already separated into smaller sections too. So You don't have to rely so much on chapters being completely uniform in the page number. I think it kind of limits what you can do with stuff. So now Ralph fights the killer, and remember what Vimris taught, using some kind of the chi. I don't think it's said quite yet until Vimris finally shows up. Elsie's just doing whatever. Then someone else appears to fight Vimris. And we learn more about them. The killer is some human named Shiku, and then the contractor is someone Vimris knows named Jensen. And this is also where I realize now more. I don't really know what any of the other contractors are supposed to be. I think Vimris fights with some ice, maybe some kind of ice demon or whatever. Don't really get much about Jensen. Can't even think of what Jensen looks like. But yeah, we know Zuri is a vampire, but I don't know what else. They all seem like kind of vaguely humanoid, demon-like, with some other kind of mythological, supernatural being mixed in, and that's kind of what I'm trying to apply to all of these, because I just don't know what they look like. But yeah, the fighting continues even more, and Vimris fights Jensen, who is being controlled by something else, apparently. And then Ralph fights Shiku. Elsie tries to tap into the eye thing, and because way back I didn't realize it until it starts bringing it back up again. Elsie thinks she can focus on being able to really observe things with eyes, and it's really kind of out of nowhere that Elsie's just assuming this is a thing, and it does become a thing, but it wasn't really much build up to this. It was like, oh, I'm going to try to start using this now. That was a thing that bothered me that one time. It must be a superpower or something. But the fight concludes with Jensen fleeing when Shiku is knocked out and Zuri arrives as backup. It's kind of just that kind of expected turn because it's like halfway through the book. Can't end too soon. And now we meet another contractor named Fiona for the Miguel Moreno of this big group, who I think is sprinkled in through the book, but you won't notice it until it actually becomes like not an antagonistic group, because that's Jensen now, but another target for Jensen and the killer. Not exactly sure why, except for maybe to just flex. I don't know why this group is suddenly a target now. That's where the killer's been doing, is on Moreno property. But yeah, now we learn more about chi, which is what Rao was using from Vimris, and that contractors are from a different realm, but I still don't know what that means. I don't know. I still don't know where the contractors come from, besides them being from a different realm. There's just a lot more explaining. At least enough of a description now for me to understand not exactly, but understand a vague sense of what's going on and be like, oh, okay. And then the more problems from this other realm can come later. Issa wants to be able to protect self and I assume friends, just going back to the desire for the contract, like I kind of thought. So he's ready to learn chi from Vimris. Right? And then we start switching back and forth more to what the Moreno group's doing, with Fiona just getting closer to finding someone, a bit of mystery just popping up here and now, and we don't really get it until we get it towards the end. But yeah, Issa's training starts. It seems to be going well enough until the killer sends a letter to a news station with a threat to kill Miguel Moreno, just the whole Moreno group, I guess. Take that down. The Morenos, they're scared, stressed. They're really wanting to up the security. Elsie's just training our thing. This is where it kind of takes off and feels like it's trying to just end, because like, oh, people have to get stronger. Kind of already going through a training arc, I guess you could say, and everyone's just doing their own things to try to protect themselves and get to the end for kind of like a final fight, if you can say, for first volume of a series. I don't know, but it's interesting to see what everyone's kind of doing, and I say it feels like it's getting rushed, but you get a pretty good idea of how everyone's doing this, so it's not rushed. So now our main group is trying to actually not necessarily go on offense, but more just continue preparing. Issa and Zuri start asking around the Moreno building, using, oh, I'm a student just doing some research or whatever. No harm's going to come from this, but they're asking around the Moreno building, only to run into Max eventually, the son of Miguel Moreno, and a new contractor named Casimir, who I guess we see a bit of Max prep, and I guess we see Max meet Casimir in like an underground parking garage. I think it was some kind of abandoned structure or whatever. And for some reason, they end up fighting so that Max doesn't try using Zuri for whatever purpose that would be. I guess to find the killer. Instead of just working together, which I think Issa does offer. But yeah, they fight. Oh, and while this is going on, everyone else kind of follows lead to a momentarily uncontrolled Jensen. And this is where it pretty much becomes evident. Oh, okay, no, this is ending now. There was still a couple more days until the attack was actually supposed to happen, which is what I thought was going to happen. But, you know, kind of a little twist, I guess you could say. I'm like, oh no, everything's going to happen early. Good things. But yeah, Vemus decides going to fight Jensen while Rao and Elsie go look for Shinku. Then we kind of bounce back and forth. Max pretty much almost kills, doesn't intentionally try to kill, but knocks Issa out. And this is where Zuri turns Issa into like a temporary ghoul who is then able to beat Max. It spares Max, doesn't really knock him out, but this whole fight seemed kind of pointless. It didn't have to happen now, at least not to this extent. There could have been like a little pushing around and then maybe. Because, well, I still don't get the point of it. Because this pretty much takes Issa and Max out of commission for any fight later. And Issa seems like he's supposed to be the main character. And Zuri. And they don't really do anything for the rest of the book. This is chapter 15. There's a few more chapters left to go. I don't know. But then Vimrus fights Jensen while talking to some kind of ghost. I think Shinku's desire was for Jensen to take the voices out of the head, and I guess one of those voices or some other voice takes over Jensen. Until Fiona comes. Yeah, this character we really don't see much, but comes to the rescue, helps Jensen fight. Rao and Elsie are able to beat Shiku, but that's kind of vague. It happens pretty quick. But yeah, everyone wins their fights. And we get some memory scenes of Jensen, Vermis, and Fiona's past together. That kind of seemed a little jumbled up to me. I wasn't completely sure because a lot of it was coming from like the ghost and what was happening to that. I guess there's a lot of talk of like their past life and they're not supposed to have memories. And it confused me more on what they actually are. If they were originally human that died and became demons, or if they were demons that became more of a different kind of demon into some kind of other service. I'm just not clear on that whole thing. So yeah, now we have chapter 17 to really just conclude things. And there's a weird like narration / flashback premise it tries to do for this last chapter, because it starts with Issa and Zuri kind of be like, yeah, everything's fine now. You gonna be okay? Yeah. It's like, well, you remember how everything just wrapped up, and then it goes back. That was pointless. That's the part I hated the most. I can legitimately say I did not like you doing that. That made no sense why you would, because then you just go back to that point after on a little bit, then you continue on later with that. I don't understand that part. If I was editing this, I would have had you take that out completely, and I would have made you rework the Max and Issa fight. But too late now. But yeah, now we focus more on Max and Fiona taking credit for stopping Shiku, blaming a bomb, stuff like that. Max just throws Shiku's head onto his father's desk. It's like, okay, this is done. But I feel like, of course, Fiona is going to carry on more with Jensen and Vimrus. But I also feel like the Marina group probably is going to step up to be more the antagonistic group, I guess. Not completely. It's going to be one of those, like, parties they're going to be butting heads with the whole time until eventually they have to take care of them one way or the other. But yeah, now Vimrus is worried about Jensen having a Forcer coming after him. And Jensen says, I would just run, but really should just hide, have protection. You want to stay with Fiona and Vimrus, they're friends, because there was like avoiding ContRact. I don't know who exactly killed Shiku. I don't think it was Jensen who killed Shinku, so I don't know what that was about. I don't know how to avoid a ContRact. I feel like they're really blowing this problem out of proportion, but I think it's more like, oh, Jensen just doesn't want to go back and leave Fiona, and that's why all these problems are coming up. And then you realize there was no conclusion really with Rao and Elsie, unless I just completely missed something. Everything that happened with those two going on, nothing. It was just nothing. I don't know what they did afterwards. Elsie has this odd thing, never mentioned. Rao just be a serial killer, nothing. It really was like Vimrus and Jensen's story and Fiona, them taking over, which was even also weird because we know nothing about Fiona, and now Fiona is super important. And that's something that's probably going to be explored later, of course, but just kind of a little jarring for the end. And this is why it feels like, oh, just rush to the end, like it has to end now. But no. But we do get, in kind of epilogue sense, a glimpse at some kind of higher up for where these contractors are, discussing Jensen and sending a couple to go look for Jensen. And then that's where it actually ends. So yeah, I had a lot to say about this because I enjoyed it. That's why I talk so much about it. That's why I nitpick at stuff. Nothing's going to be perfect, of course. Everyone has different preferences. That's why I do these little opinion reviews and break it down like this to go over every little bit. Yeah, there could have been more. I always want more. That will probably never change for me. I don't remember ever reading something and being like, oh yeah, there was too much here. No, I always want more. That's just me as a reader. I'm not the only person you're writing for, though. I get that. So this is my own personal opinions on this matter. But I'm looking forward to the second book. Where this goes, I can see where it could go. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of little things that I just like about it. I like that the names aren't just typical names. You don't really see names, at least I don't. Jensen, maybe. Vimeris, Fiona, maybe. Rao, Elsie, Issa. I try to look up where those names might originate from in case I just never miss them. Issa kind of does, but also it doesn't really matter yet if that's Issa, the name is going to have any importance. But there's a lot to this. There's other little things that may just be little secrets, like the R in the name, ContRact. Why it's that bigger? Still don't know. It could play a part later. I'm looking forward to it. So Brandon, whatever you got coming, where you got cooking, keep doing it. I'm really looking forward to this and where it's going to go. But yeah, I hope all of you enjoyed my breakdown of this. Kind of got a glimpse of how I'm feeling about it. I hope that spoiler-free part was helpful to you at all. I really try not to spoil stuff, even though I really get into these breakdowns. That's something I'm trying to get better at. But yeah, if you want to talk more about this book, of course, follow Brandon too. See, I don't know if there is a way to follow. But also follow Vic's Lab, see other books coming from that. But yeah, let's just talk more about it. You can do that in comments or on social media for me. I'll leave links to all that stuff. But yeah, I also have a Ko-fi. I want to thank my members, Julio Vasquez, and then also Vic's Lab, who also helps support me there. You can too if you want. You don't have to, but I appreciate it either way. But that is it for this Otakutainment review and my review of ContRact by Brandon Nowakowski. It was a good one. I'm looking for the next one. But until next time, I've been your Otakutainer, the AC Stories. Thank you so much, and bye.